Alrighty, welcome everybody. My name is Rita Yelda. I am the Outreach and Communications Manager for the Coalition for the Delaware River Watershed. So excited to have you all today with us to learn about conservation video production. We're going to learn about mobile video production and learn some core functions today. Today's webinar is sponsored by Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania and New Jersey League of Conservation Voters, as well as the Coalition for the Delaware River Watersheds Communications Work Group. If your organization is a member of the coalition, we welcome you to take part in the communications work group. There is a monthly call. We work together to provide technical assistance and training to help improve and expand communications capacity through webinars like this and informal information sharing. We also create shareable communications materials for some of our common agendas and policies. So after today's presentation, there will be time for a Q&A at the end. It is going to be done through the chat box. So feel free to type questions into the chat box. We will get to them at the end of the presentation. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Hillary. Hillary Mohop, Social Media Strategist for Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania and New Jersey League of Conservation Voters. Take it away, Hillary.
Thanks, Rita. So like Rita said, I'm Hillary Mohop. I am the social media strategist and inclusion manager at Conservation Voters of PA and New Jersey LCV. Our two organizations are funded to do some similar things to what Rita was saying about the Coalition for the Delaware River Watershed. We're funded by the William Penn Foundation to help organizations working in the watershed build your capacities to engage new and established constituencies. We do this in a variety of ways, including trainings like this one, but also by promoting your events and programs, providing social media content and support, and a variety of other ways. And I'm happy to talk more about that offline, one-on-one. Our presenter today is Marcela Gara from Resource Media. For the past 10 years, Marcela has worked on social justice campaigns with a focus on human rights and women's empowerment. Along the way, she has woven into this work her love for visual storytelling through digital photography and filmmaking, and we're going to hear about that today. One career highlight for Marcela comes from the time she spent in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. There she developed a youth media project that connected documentary film and photography as a set of tools for people living in favelas to have a space to tell their own story in their own words. Upon returning to Seattle, where she works now, Marcela worked with former USAID Chief of Innovation, Maura O'Neill, on communications projects in international development, innovation, and social entrepreneurship. She has a master's in international affairs and media from the New School. And before I turn it over to Marcela, I just want to remind folks that you will all be on mute during most of this presentation. And if you have questions, Marcela will answer them at the end. And feel free to put those questions in the chat box along the way as we go. So take it away, Marcela.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me. So today we're going to talk about what it means to sit down, plan, and create your own video that helps convey your story or your nonprofit's or organization's campaign message. So I'm excited to get into this. This is do-it-yourself mobile storytelling. And we will be showing videos, so bear with me on technology and moving between those. So here's our agenda for today. It's a kind of a snapshot of what we'll be covering, which will really be a review of traditional video techniques, some basic editing, as well as some highlighting some apps, as well as walking through some of them. So our agenda is really techniques and some basic terms. We'll actually look at some example videos so we can get inspired. We'll look at some basic editing icons and modules. So before we get into the apps, we'll familiarize ourselves with what different platforms look like. And then we'll walk through editing and then explore some graphics and how we add text overlays to videos, and then hopefully have time for a nice Q&A at the end. So I just wanted to go broad a little bit here and kind of explore what is so great about making videos. And I think, you know, for starters, the power of video is real. We know today people are watching videos more than ever before, especially with the introduction of smartphones, and everyone is constantly watching videos or reading articles on their phones. And this is really because video is such a powerful tool. There's just so much more you can do in order to convey a message using videos. There's more capacity to show really authentic emotions because you can show real people, you can show real events as they unfold in real time. And that's really great because that means that, you know, you don't have to have these super polished videos these days. And they're not necessarily even the best way to go about connecting with people. And this can be really effective and play up to your strength. A couple other things to note about making your own videos. The best part is that really you're in control. You're in control of the video's overall mission. You get to maintain your independence and potentially make your video cost effective, as well as, you know, get really creative in terms of the length of the video, the look and feel, etc. If you are thinking about producing, you know, a longer style film, that typically requires a team effort. So sometimes it is okay to rely on expertise of others, but for today, we're really just going to imagine that you are only concerned with making videos for social media using just your phone and either a mobile app or an online tool. So before we kind of get into our examples, I think as you embark on creating your own video, it's a good idea to kind of evaluate and determine your own skill level, as well as thinking about where this video will live. So really asking these two basic questions of how will I capture my footage and where will this video live and be shared. I think it's also important to right size your skills. So if you're super new to video making, I think it's definitely okay to start really small. We encourage that you just start testing out different apps, testing out what it means to make videos for you, and start to grow from there. And then as you get more comfortable, you can start to incorporate some of those more sophisticated elements, bells and whistles, which we'll get into in terms of like text overlays and music, and different transitions. But it is okay to start small and play around and get comfortable with it and just have fun creating. And going back to this distribution plan, I think acknowledging where this video will live will help you in the long run as you plan this video, especially as you start to pick and choose the app that you want to use. So making sure that it's, you know, formatted to the size that you want it. So if your organization utilizes Instagram, make sure that the app that you use has a square option for you to create a video in the right size. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about video styles. I think this is something that you probably already know a lot about, because I think with nonprofits or advocacy campaigns, videos that you see are typically around awareness, appreciation, some kind of call to action, or some kind of general summary of some kind. But if we start to unpack what those videos are, they kind of fall into these different video genres and styles. So for example, like in this image here, this is clearly, you know, part of a documentary style video, which is where the viewer sees interviews with multiple experts or advocates, and they're really conveying a point of view and ultimately telling a story. I often see a lot of organizations use, you know, a simple recap video, which is typically a sequence of photos or B-roll from an event or an action that's coming up. And commonly we call these montage videos, where clips are edited together, and that can be video clips or that can be the photos, and they're just edited together to really convey a feeling or message of some kind. And I just want to quickly define what we mean by B-roll. It's one of those terms that's often used. And for instance, it's if you're doing a documentary style film, the interview clips are the main footage, and then anything in between will be considered B-roll. So if this woman is your main subject of the video, if you have shots of her opening a door, walking into her house, that would be considered the B-roll. So that kind of footage that really sets the scene and can be really instrumental when you're creating a really simple video for an organization or your specific campaign. So I think next we're going to get into an example. This is an example of a montage video that we produced for our partners in New Mexico. And this is a good example because they weren't actually able to go into the field and capture new video, but they did have a library of photos. So what we did is we worked with them to produce this montage video with a script and text overlays to really convey a compelling message about keeping the river wild. And I just want to note that this is square. So we knew going into the production of this video that we really wanted to make it square so that it could be shared out on Instagram. So hopefully this works. I'll make sure my sound is up. Okay, so I don't know if this is something where we can get folks to access the chat, but I just wanted to pose this question that after, viewing this video, this montage video, were there any other techniques that you saw that were used in this video? And if you can, it can be just a quick one-word response in the chat. Yes, text, definitely call to action. It wasn't in black and white, and music. Yes, those are exactly some of the things I was looking for. Yes, text overlay, beautiful. Let's see, can I close this? Yes. The other thing I wanted to just point out in this video that you just saw was something called the Ken Burns effect. This is used all the time. It's named after a famous documentary filmmaker who really made this popular, and that's that where you see this like zooming in on a photo, a zooming out on a photo, maybe it's spanning across a video, an image, and really what it's doing is creating this like movement. It's making the video more dynamic so that you're not just looking at this still image for 3 seconds, but it's incorporating this kind of sense of movement, which is really nice. And so this is something that you'd probably achieve in a really professional type video editing platform. But the good news is that there's a lot of apps out there that kind of incorporate this into the templates that you can use. And so again, it's just a fun way that you can take just photos and find a video app that works for you and creates this movement so that your video is a little bit more dynamic and fun. Okay, we're going to go into a few more examples. This example is something I put together for a tip sheet that we wanted to promote that we had created. It's very on topic for this presentation, but this is something, this application will actually go into later on. It was Adobe Spark is what we used to create this. We had no budget, so this was, an opportunity to kind of show how can you make a mini explainer video to convey a message or an idea or a how-to, and use one of these kind of online platforms to, instead of just promoting this tip sheet with a static image, we thought it would make more sense to promote it with a video itself. So we can show this. One thing I also forgot to note about that video was the fact that we didn't have any video available. It wasn't something that we could go out again and capture video. So this is to say that you can find kind of free to use stock video online. Just another way to think about how you can create a video in an afternoon by accessing some free to use tools out there. And then I have one more example. Oops. So this is another example just to kind of get creative. I know we've been talking about documentary style, montages, and this is a good example of thinking a little bit outside the box and using a one-shot kind of video. So this is where the camera is in one angle and it doesn't move. Everything else in the shot moves. And it's great because I think even though this is, I think, sponsored by Ben & Jerry, so they have more resources, I think it's a good representation of something that could be easily replicated using applications that are either already on your phone, like the time-lapse application, or you're finding a different app that has that application incorporated, and thinking creatively. So we can take a look at how this one is imagined. Okay, so just quickly before we get into some more of the applications, here's a recap of everything we kind of have talked about thus far. So what is a documentary? What is a montage video? Even what's an explainer video? The one shot, which we just looked at, and B-roll, which as you can see is super useful when you're creating low budget video. Okay, so now we're going to get into some commonly used icons. So I picked these out because I feel like they're pretty universal across sophisticated platforms or even phone applications. And And so you see these across the board. So I thought it'd be important to kind of call them out. So if you're not going to use one of the apps that we highlight here, these are some that I think you'll probably run into if you have a other preferred app that you utilize. So the microphone is obviously something to do with audio. So that's where you could click here and either record a voiceover right on the spot or incorporate some other file or audio that you have either located on your phone or on your computer. Anywhere that you see a T, this is on, again, across so many platforms, this is really universal, is that opportunity to add text over your clips. And then the scissors here, which is probably the most important icon to know, is really that ability to select a clip, cut it to right where you want it to end or begin. And then this arrow with the box is that icon that you can click on to share your video either straight to social media or just to save it onto your device. The plus sign is also really universal. So if you want to add more clips to your timeline, which we'll look at next, this is the ability to, if you missed a file that you want to incorporate into your existing project, this is how you would upload it. And then our circles, this is usually indicating some kind of filter that you can add onto your videos. And then probably the most important part of any video editing app or platform is the timeline or sequence. So this is from, I think, Adobe Premiere, which is a little more elevated, but I think it's still a good indication of what to expect. So these purple boxes represent an individual video file. So however you import that into your app or your platform, they'll show up as these little boxes. And essentially the sequence, which is from left to right, indicates the beginning of your video would start here, and then anything after that would come after. So this would essentially be the end of your video. So each of these represent a different clip. And so if this line is across this clip, this is what you would be seeing. And then as it moves to the right, you would then see this clip and then this clip. One other thing to note, as you see the microphones here, this is obviously audio, an indication of audio, and that's why you see an A here. And this is just your soundtrack or your music track. So this is essentially what it would also look in any of the phone apps where you would import an audio track or music and underlay it under your video files. And then you can also kind of splice these up and move it around. Okay, so that is a very crash course into the timeline and sequence. Before we get into some apps, I wanted to note a few things. So obviously there are tons of apps out there. It's pretty limitless. And so I think it's important to explore those, make sure you find the one that's right for you. The ones that we highlight here were based mostly on the fact that we wanted something that was accessible in terms of entry level to the app. We wanted to include stuff that was found both on Androids or iPhones. And we also wanted to, again, incorporate this distribution idea that mainly these videos are going to be shared or distributed online, so on any social media platform. So essentially, we're not creating videos here for prime time or TV. These are really focused on being able to share them to social media. And then one other thing I also want to just note about apps is that they are glitchy. They can be unpredictable. They can shut down on you. So I just want to really emphasize that as much as you can plan out before you start working in an app, the better. So knowing how you want your individual video clips to, sit on the sequence. So what's your first clip? What's your second clip? Even thinking about the text overlays that you're going to incorporate, even if it means writing out a script ahead of time, that's super important. So if you're doing it as you edit the video and it crashes for whatever reason, you don't lose all of that knowledge. And so it's just important to know that online services or apps, they are always updating, they're changing, so they're not 100% dependable. So again, emphasizing the fact that it's really important to plan ahead. So our first app that we're going to look at is called InShot, which is a little more newer to me, but I really, it's amazing for just my introduction to it. I've put in here kind of a sequence of what the workflow would be. So really thinking again, what is the distribution plan? Where is this going to be shared? So that's where you see setting your canvas or frame size for all of your video clips. One other thing to note about using any of these phone apps is all about working with your fingers, right? So at any point as we go through this screenshot of this video of me using the platform, you'll really need to note that it's all about holding your finger down on options. It's about moving clips around with your finger, and just getting comfortable with that. And then it's really kind of sky's the limit. So exploring the filters, adding music, incorporating text, and this app has so much more as well. So I'm going to press play here, but I'm going to try to stop it as we go so we can kind of do this together. And I just want to point out, this is our timeline here that we talked about. Here are our option menus, and then this is our screen to see whatever this line marker is on, that's going to indicate what you see here, and that's essentially how your video will flow as well. So again, we're seeing some of those icons we talked about at the beginning. So this is how we would add more clips. So we would click here, and this would access your photo library, where you can incorporate any of these files to your timeline. So at the beginning of this video, you're going to see me, I think, selecting the canvas size. And then again, you'll see just me moving the screen because this was filmed vertically, and we want to expand it so that it reaches the outside of my screen here, to make it fit for Instagram, I believe. So again, this is using your hands, your fingers, and pushing down on the screen to make it fit. That probably happened very fast, but essentially it was hitting the canvas option, selecting Instagram, and then zooming in. And then I went back to my timeline. And again, you're seeing my sequence here at the bottom. And I've, with my finger, highlighted this clip, this individual clip. And these markers here, because I've pressed down and then I've selected this clip, I'm going to move it to the left to indicate that I want to shorten it. So let's see that. So that's all I'm doing. I'm just, with my finger, clicking the clip, or pressing down on the individual clip, taking the marker and moving it to the left, just to exactly to where I want it to be. Okay. One other great thing about this app that I really enjoy is the fact that you can hit down on the timeline, again, using your fingers. And if you hold it down long enough, it'll pop up each individual clip into these little boxes. And then what it's allowing you to do is move the boxes around. So let's say I want the third clip to move over here. I can just press this down and move it to the exact position of my sequence that I want it to be. Okay, so what I did there is I want to explore the music options here. So I just clicked on the music option. With my fingers, I click that, it opens up I select tracks, and what's great about this platform is that it also comes with ready available music, so you don't have to necessarily worry about copyrights, number one, and you can use a plethora of different options. Most of these are music just without lyrics, and can really change the feeling of the video essentially. So what you're going to see me do here is select the video, the music track up above. So in this version, instead of the image that we looked at before where the music track was below the clips, this one is above. And so if I want to edit the music track, what I really want to do is select it by, again, holding down with my finger on the purple and then dragging it to exactly where I want it to start. Again, I hit the music track and clicked edit here so that I could manipulate the audio of the music. So when I did that, I selected that I want it to fade in. So I don't want my video just to come in roaring with the music. I want it to nicely fade in, and at the end, I want it to fade out. So this app is great that it allows you to do that. And I can increase the sound of the music. And then if you look here at the bottom, you can see that it says 100% on my clips, which means that the noise that accompanies my clip, so probably in this kayak, it's the sound of the water. So what I can do is I can hit this music, this little, I don't know, music icon or sound icon, and you'll see how I can apply that to all. So I can bring down the sound, the background sound of all of my clips. So the double check marks allows me to apply that to all of my clips. So I just want to quickly show that again. And now, because my music track is so much longer than my video, I want to cut it. So I want to slice my video or my music track up here. So you're going to see that I'm going to move this line, which indicates where I'm at the video, to where my video ends. And you'll see me select the slice tool. And so I know that happened very fast, but basically I put it to right where I wanted the music track to end. I put where the line is. I hit split or splice on other platforms. It made it into 2 tracks. I selected the right side and then I deleted it. There's an option here to delete. It happens super fast. So now we're just going to go into adding text. So again, we're going to click the clip that we want by pressing down with our finger and hitting the T. And now, so you see this color wheel. If I want to change the color, I can, with my finger, select the color wheel. It'll bring up all these different color options. If I want to change the font, I'll click on the A. I'll look at all the options. And then on the right, those 3 circles is how the text will fade in or fade out. I can manipulate how I want it to kind of interact on the clip. So will it come through the left side? Will it exit on the right side? And if I want to move the actual text, again, all I'm going to do is with my fingers is hold down on the text and move it around the screen and then position it exactly to where I want. If I want to increase the size, I'll pinch it. So I'll pinch it forward to make it bigger, and I'll I'll pinch my fingers together if I want to make it smaller. So after I've positioned it to exactly where I want, you'll now see that it's included this text, the text track here. And it's similar just to my video clips where these indicators on the left and right, I can, with my finger, either elongate these to the right by just dragging it with my finger across the screen. And I can also click on the track itself and ultimately lift it to where I want it to live. Okay. Now I'm going to click that 3 circles that we talked about, which is the filter. So this app comes with a bunch of filters that you can kind of play around with, see which ones you like. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click that filter option and select the filter that I like. And then I'm going to hit the double check marks to apply it to all my video clips, not just one. So that's going to happen fast. So you can see that the filter has made all my clips a little warmer with some kind of yellow undertones. And what I want to do next is, what's great about this app is that they allow you to add transitions, which is really nice. So these little circle dots right here, you can click on the transitions, these buttons. And that means that between this clip and this clip, we're going to create a transition. So instead of it just cutting to this one, it's going to kind of fade into the next scene. So that's what you'll see me do here. Okay, so now I'm testing it. And so what I really recommend, again, I know we talked about this at the beginning, but really testing out, because there's so many different transition options you can have. The one that I selected here is just really basic. It's a really nice, just soft fade into it. So we'll see that again. And then ultimately at the end of your project, once you said this is my final video, you're going to hit this button up at the top with the arrow to either save it to your device or to upload it directly onto the platform of your choice. I am going to highlight this next app, but I'm really going to move on to the Adobe Start because I want to make sure we have time for questions. So I would say that this one is very similar to the InShot one. Same idea. You would select the files that you want to incorporate to the app in order to start editing. You can see me selecting 1, 2, I think 3 shots here. It's a little bit different, the interface, in that the timeline is actually above here and the options and the way that you manipulate the clips are down here. So it's a little less intuitive to me to have the timeline up here and be editing the clips. But again, this is where you would edit your canvas to resize to the platform that you're sharing it on. They have music options. I think they have less options than InShot, but they do have some free to use royalty-free rights music. Here's your trim, here's your scissors. This is how you would move, either split a clip or delete part of it. And then this is where we would add text. And again, this is how you would manipulate a filter if you wanted to make it colder, if you wanted to make it look more vintage. They have options for here. So I would highly recommend exploring this, but I want to make sure that we have enough time to get into the next one, which is Adobe Spark Video, which is probably my go-to. The reason I say that I really appreciate this platform is because you can start a project on your phone, and you can also then it'll connect it, or it'll be saved right onto your program if you choose to log in via your desktop. So everything will be there. So there's a lot of nice kind of across device kind of connection. And then the other thing I would say that is really great about Adobe Spark is that because it's Adobe, it has more of that sophisticated design elements. I like their fonts. I like their styling. I think it's more sophisticated. The music options are great. They're either peppy, or they can be more quiet. So the options that they have there can convey a whole array of emotions, which is really nice. You can export videos either for social media, which will be widescreen, or square for Instagram. And I think the other great thing is that you can either do video, or you can even do static posts here. So I will just get into it. Before we do, this is kind of your home base when you start a project on Adobe Spark Video. So this, again, you're now familiar, this is your timeline, this is your sequence of video clips. This button here allows you to record audio. This little plus sign that we've seen as universal is how you would add new clips, whether that's video, whether that's photos. And also what's really nice about Adobe Spark is they have a whole array of icons that you can use. And then on the right-hand side, this is where you would select the layout of each slide or clip. So you could make it full screen, you could do split screen, you could even make a title page for your video. And this is how you would resize it. And here's how you'll see your music options. So I'm going to stop share for a second and then open this up on my desktop so we can get into some kind of text overlays and working with graphics. Okay, so hopefully you see my screen here. This is kind of my home base. Again, you can use the app, but for purposes of this, I wanted to just walk through it on the desktop. This is obviously where you see my video that I showed you earlier, but this is a project that I started for this presentation. So if I wanted to go in here and edit my video, I can return to it. So you can see these are obviously familiar clips from before that I've already added here. But again, if I wanted to add a new clip or video file, I would look for my plus sign here. I would add it. I would either add a video by selecting here. I would add text by here, icon, photo, etc. I can manipulate the length of this file, this slide here. I can make this up to 30 seconds or down to, I think, a second. So we can do this as 3. Here's where I manipulate my layout. So for this, let's try a split screen. And let's look at an icon. So if I wanted to incorporate an icon, let's say river, they're gonna bring up a ton of Creative Commons icons that you're able to utilize. And let's say I really liked this cool graphic. I would select that and they would incorporate it. And then I would say, and then hit enter. If I wanted to see what it looked like the other way, I would hit these arrows. I think I like it like this. If I wanted to see, let's see, if I wanted to move this into a photo, I would hit photo here. Again, what's so great about this platform is that they're already connected with a lot of free to use images. So if I'm clicking river, I can look here to say, oh, this is a beautiful image, and I can use it here. So if I wanted to review what this looked like or from my sequence, I would click this start button. Come on. Okay, well, let's see, can I put it in here? If I wanted to see what this looked like full screen, I could click here. If I want to zoom in or zoom out, I click this little pencil icon and hit the hourglass to minus to see what that would look like. If I want to play where this text is, I can decrease it by hitting the T minus or T plus. I can also drag it to where I want it to be. So if I hit here, I can move it around. I can play around with it. If I want to explore some of the themes here, I have some built-in branded ones that I like to use, but they have a bunch of different ones that you can play with and try out the different colors. If I want to resize this for square, I can here. You can even do that. And now if you want to add music, you would click over here. You can test out. So they kind of split them out into categories. So you have happy, playful, relaxed. I usually go for bringing change. You can manipulate the sound on it. And this will add it to across all of these clips. And I will try one more time to see if I can play this. So let's say I wanted to move this here. I just, with my finger on my mouse track, I just move it over. I think if you can remember that video I showed earlier, the only reason I want to play this is so that you can see how each of these different themes will change up how the each one of these clips will look. So it'll zoom it in, it'll provide that kind of Ken Burns effect that we talked about at the beginning. So this is again to say that this platform has that kind of built into it so that if you only have still images, you're able to create kind of a dynamic video and add text overlays. Yeah, so I think I might pause it there so we have a little time for questions at the end. Let me stop sharing. Do you want me to just go through these questions or?
sorry, I was unmuting myself. It looks like there are some questions about the mechanics of Adobe Spark and whether the music is royalty free or if you have to import it yourself. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so a lot of these platforms will have royalty free. So Adobe Spark has royalty free music, so it's not, you don't have to write at the end music by so and so. That being said, I think there are some royalty free websites out there where you can download music as long as you incorporate the attribution. And so I think at the end you can add a slide really easily using Adobe Spark saying music by, but anything that's built in there is free to use without attribution.
Cool. And then there's also another question about, obviously all of these, you talked a little bit about Adobe Spark on your desktop. Are the other apps that you mentioned, is there like a desktop version of them as well?
I think not. So I think the other versions are just straight video editing apps. So I think I'm most familiar with Adobe Spark because you can kind of move between desktop and app, which I find really useful and nice. But I don't think that is the case for the other two.
If folks have other questions, feel free to add them in the chat box.
I was gonna.
Go ahead.
I see one question about InShot Pro.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say utilizing any of these apps, again, start exploring, start playing with them. And oftentimes if you download the free version, you'll find once you start getting really good and you want to either like take out a watermark, that'll cost a fee essentially. So in terms of pricing on these, it'll vary. So I think with InShot Pro, they have kind of a scale. So it first costs X amount to take off the watermark. And then if you want to access another option or some kind of, I think if they have more filters that you want to use and explore, that'll cost more money. I think the highest to unlock the pro capabilities is around $30 or $40. So I think it's an investment, and that's why it's so important to test out the ones you like the most and think about how you'll be using it and how often before you start kind of making those purchases if that's the route you want to go.
Sure. It looks like Rita has a question. What's the best canvas size for uploading a video to YouTube?
So a lot of those apps had YouTube options in them. So I don't know off the top of my head what the canvas size. I think it's like 2:1. But each of the options you'll see will have a like in the InShot, it'll have the icon or the logo for that platform, so you'll know right away which one to export it as based on the logo. Otherwise, I think with Adobe Spark, you could create a widescreen video, and I know that it would be accessible using YouTube upload. Anything widescreen 2:1, I think, is a good indicator.
Great. Thank you. I think that's all the questions that were in the chat box. Does anyone have any additional questions they want to put in the chat? I have a question that I'm not going to type out. What do you think the biggest hurdle that the biggest / most important hurdle for people to overcome is? Like, if we can overcome one obstacle, what should it be?
I think it could be two things. I think it could be being experimental, right? So I think just thinking a little outside the box testing, allowing time to test out these apps to find the one that makes sense for you. And then I think the biggest hurdle, at least in my experience, has been text and knowing where and what you want to say. So as much as you can, especially if you're working with a team, as much as you can outline what the text is going to be before you actually go into implementation will save you so much time, and thinking about what that sequence will look like ahead of time. And I would also say keeping it short. So you want to be able to see the images or the video, so as much as you can be concise with your text and keep it simple, and know that videos go fast. So you want to keep text short, concise, and to the point as much as possible.
Cool, thank you. Looks like we have one more question. Do you have any tips for lighting on different skin tones?
In terms of using filters?
I'm not sure. Filters or lighting?
Yeah, I think it depends. I mean, if it's for lighting for photography or for video, I think you're going to want to work with someone who's more experienced, knowing those kinds of just knowing good lighting, because I think that could be a whole other webinar on just lighting in general when it comes to video or photography. Because there is some considerations that you do want to make sure that people are being seen in the right light, because it's not universal a lot of time. So I think maybe if you are running into that using an app, maybe it's not making the filter apply to all clips. I don't know off the top of my head of which filter, if it's a warm or a blue filter, will apply to different skin tones, but I think that's a really good question to kind of think about, and actually for me to think about how that applies to video apps.
Cool, thank you. I think, well, let's ask one more question that's in the chat box right now so that we can make sure we end on time. And this question is, what is the maximum length generally recommended for videos?
Yeah, I feel like that's such a question that constantly is changing, because I've heard it depends on the platform, is what I've heard, is what I'm seeing now at least. So I'm seeing that Facebook is now, because I've heard for so long it should be 30 seconds or less, right? Because people don't have their attention span is decreasing, I guess. But what I'm also reading as of lately is it depends on the actual platform. So now I'm seeing that Facebook prefers that they see a higher engagement, higher views if you have a minute or 2-minute video. Whereas when you get into more of the like Instagram videos where people are scrolling, you want to keep it, again, I think lower than 30 seconds, because people on Facebook are either going on their desktop or their phone, whereas Instagram is really just about scrolling with your finger, going down. And so that's where you kind of want to shorten your videos, and you can't even go over a minute. So again, always considering that distribution plan and thinking about where your video is going to live, and basing that timing around that distribution plan is like, I just want to emphasize that so much.
Cool, thank you. Rita, do you want to say anything else before we end?
I'm just going to say that so this webinar is being recorded, and everybody that is signed up for the webinar will get a link to download this in your email afterwards. And I just wanted to take a minute to thank Marcela so much. I have learned a lot on this webinar, and I'm sure everybody else has as well. Thank you so much, Marcela, for your time today and your expertise.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.